Good morning, everybody. It is such a privilege to be in the house this morning. I'm so excited to share. As Zander said, my name is Ethan. I have the privilege of being on staff at Lighthouse. I lead our Ignite Leadership Academy. It's our gap year program. Applications are open. If you know anyone who doesn't know what to do next year or is looking for something to do, please send them my way. And it is a privilege to share this morning. So as Zander said, we are starting a new series in the book of Ruth. Now the series is titled, It's Bigger Than You Think. And this is going to be a 7-week series. So we're going to take a little break over Vision Weekend in January. But other than that, it's going to run from now until sometime in Feb. And it is going to be an awesome time of just diving into the Word, diving into the Old Testament. And one of, as we saw there, which was quite cool in Lindsay's story, Ruth, who was who played a key role in the Bible and in the story that we know it. And so, if you guys want, there is a summary video done by the Bible Project, which we can send out on the WhatsApp groups. It just gives you a great summary of the book, what it's about, if you want a little spoiler for the next week, or if you just want to wait for each week to hear what it says. So, firstly, I also just want to honor the eldership team for allowing me to come and share this morning. I'm completely submitted to their authority and correction, and I hope that if I do mess up, they will correct me. And I pray I don't mess up, but it happens sometimes, you know. So just for a bit of context, so we are going through the book of Ruth, as I mentioned, and it was written in the days when the judges ruled Israel. So this is just after Joshua had brought them out of the promised land. He had now passed away, and there was no leader left in Israel, and so the judges ruled in Israel. This was a time of social instability, of spiritual decline in Israel, and lawlessness. Ironically, when the judges ruled, there was lawlessness, but this was what was happening. And when Joshua died, there was, as I said, no leader, which is in today's church at Lighthouse, and what we try and do in today's church is we try and raise up leaders, potential leaders, constantly try and bring them through so that if something does happen, there's always people that are ready, that are willing, and that are capable to step up and take that person's place. This was written in Bethlehem, or it was based in Bethlehem, and that was known as the house of bread. It was a symbol of God's provision. And it was another part of the story which we'll read just now. It mentions the Moabites, which often represented the world, its temptations, taking people away from God's provision and covenant community. This was the Lord's covenant with Abraham over Israel, and so that's what it means by covenant community. And Moab was also one of Israel's ancient enemies, which we will also see later on. I'll show you how that links. And then this final context is that even God's people may face scarcity and dislocation. Now that'll all come into play very soon. So if we have our Bibles, or if you want to open your app, click to Ruth 1 verse 1. I'll be reading from the NLT version. So it says, "In the days when the judges ruled in Israel, a severe famine came upon the land. So a man from Bethlehem in Judah left his home and went to live in the country of Moab, taking his wife and 2 sons with him." So now there was a famine in Israel, in Bethlehem, and so he, with his family, moved to Moab. Now this was obviously, as I mentioned, Moab was one of Israel's ancient enemies. So we must imagine that the famine was pretty bad for them to move into the country, into the land of their enemies, right? They must have been suffering. And the first point is famine. What is famine? Famine can be physical and spiritual. Most of us know physical famine as lack of food, lack of water, provision, or even we can see famine in like relationships around us where we start losing people. There's not many people around us. But famine can also be spiritual. There's spiritual famine, which could equal lack of prayer. There's not much reading the Word. There's lack of connection to the Father. You feel isolated. You feel like the Father's not there. That can also be a spiritual famine. And so while we're reading this, I want you to keep that in mind, those 2 points of physical and spiritual famine, because oftentimes we limit our thinking to only physical famine. But I want to keep in mind that spiritual famine as well. And so as we carry on to verse 2 and 3, it says, the man's name was Elimelech, and his wife was Naomi. There were two sons, Their two sons were Machlon and Kilion. They were Ephrathites from Bethlehem in the land of Judah. And when they reached Moab, they settled there. Then Elimelech died, and Naomi was left with her two sons. The first thing that I heard was Ruth. The book of Ruth doesn't start with Ruth. It starts with Naomi and her family. And that opened my eyes to see that the book is called Ruth. So Ruth is a very important person. But what did it take? It took Naomi, it took someone else to stir up Ruth's faith, to start her journey. And that's sometimes what happens with us, is that it takes someone else. It takes someone else to step in, someone else to reach out to us, to bring us through, to start our journey, to stir up our faith, to kickstart our faith. And that's kind of where Bruce stepped in for me, is because I was in a season of famine. I would describe it as that. I was in a season of famine, and I met Bruce, and he kind of brought me in, and he kickstarted my faith, and he kickstarted my journey. But whose story are you going to be a part of, church? We all have a role to play in this kingdom, and that is why this series, It's Bigger Than You Think, this title is so important, because it's so much bigger than us. When I say whose story are you going to be a part of, it's not for credit. We don't want to be part of someone's story to say, hey, I brought that guy up, I found that guy, I mentored him, I walked with him. No, we want to be part of someone's story for the kingdom, for what the Lord has called us to do. That was make disciples of all men. And so that is why this title, It's Bigger Than You Think, we often think that it's so limited to us. It's so much bigger than we can ever imagine. The God that we serve, this plan that He has for us, this world is so much bigger than we can ever imagine. But we need to start thinking like that. We need to stop thinking about ourselves, stop thinking about what we get from this, the credit we'll get, the compliments we'll get, and start thinking of what the Lord has planned for us, the Lord has asked us to do. What do we do in our famines, physical or spiritual? When we go through a season of famine, what do? Do we run, doubt, start questioning the faithfulness of God? Those are some of the things that most of us do, me included, when there's a season of famine. The first thing we do is we run. We run away from either, like in the story, they ran physically. They left Bethlehem, and now they went into Moab. They ran physically. Sometimes we run physically. We move houses, we move countries, we move cities, whatever it may be. But also we can run spiritually. We can run from the Father. If we, in a season of famine, spiritual famine, physical famine, we want to run. We want to leave that time. We don't want to be stuck there. And then do we doubt? We start doubting, is God real? Is God really there? Is God for me? Because why could bad things be happening if there's a God that's there, if there's a God that's for me? We start questioning the faithfulness. That's kind of similar, but is God really faithful? Is His word really true? And that's where I want to ask, does famine mean that God's not there? No. Famine does not mean that God is absent. Famine does not mean that God has abandoned you. Famine does not mean that there is no God. In James 1, verse 2-4, it says, "Dear brothers and sisters, when troubles of any kind come your way, consider it an opportunity for great joy. For when you know that when your faith is tested, your endurance has a chance to grow. So let it grow. For when your endurance is fully developed, you will be perfect and complete, needing nothing." And then in a similar context, 1 Peter 4, verse 12-13 says, "Dear friends, don't be surprised at the fiery trials you're going through, as if something strange were happening to you. Instead, be very glad, for these trials make you partners with Christ in His suffering, so that you will have the wonderful joy of seeing His glory when it is revealed to all the world." These are probably some of my favorite verses, not because they motivate, not because they make me feel good, but they make me realize that the Bible says you're going to struggle. The Bible says that there will be famines. There will be tough times. But His word says, don't be troubled. Consider an opportunity for great joy. Friends, God is still present. and He is faithful, and His promises still remain. He has spoken promises over us through the Bible. He has spoken promises to us individually through prophetic words, through encouragements, through preachers on a Sunday. He speaks to us constantly, and those words aren't just to make us feel good. They aren't just so that we can say, hey, God spoke to me. They are real. They are true, and they will come through. God follows through on His word. When we're in a season of famine, we tend to panic and rush, or worry and leave. As soon as famine comes, we start worrying, we start panicking, we start stressing what's going to happen, whether that's physical famine, financial, spiritual. We start panicking. We think, why is this happening? And we rush. We rush to make the quickest decision to get out of there. We start worrying and we leave. But what does that equal? Panic and rush equals desperate and illogical moves. When we start panicking, we're not thinking. We're not taking our time to process what's happening and to think of our next move, to think of how we're going to get out of this. We make a quick move that's desperate to get us out for a short period of time, or that will give us a short time of comfort. But it's illogical. It doesn't make sense because we haven't thought of it. We haven't prayed to it. And then desperate and illogical moves cause separation and loneliness. When we make those desperate and illogical moves, sometimes we separate ourselves too quickly. Sometimes we run too far. Sometimes we just leave everything behind. And then once that comfort period, once that short little period of joy is gone, we realize, we've left everything, we've gone. And that's kind of what happened here. We don't know how long they waited to make this decision to move to Moab, but they moved far. They moved away from their home. They moved away from everything that they knew. And I'm going to just read a little bit more so that we can get a bit more context, and then I'll carry on. So, it says that Elimelech died. You make an illogical decision, and now they moved away far, but now her husband's died, right? That's part of the consequence of moving and making rush decisions. So in verse 4, I'm going to continue, verse 4 and 5, it says, the two sons married Moabite women. One married a woman named Orpah, and another a woman named Ruth. Here's where we see the first mention of Ruth in verse 4. So it takes us 4 verses before we hear Ruth. This is who the book is about. But about 10 years later, both Mahlon and Chilion died. This left Naomi alone, without her 2 sons or her husband. So we see that her son married Moabite women. It's not prohibited. It was prohibited for Israelites to marry Canaanites, but it wasn't prohibited for them to marry Moabite women, but it was discouraged because of their commitment to other gods and how that would work. When famine comes, physical or spiritual, we seek comfort in something that could not be okay, something that could not be good for us. We seek comfort as quick as possible. We find kind of loopholes to make ourselves feel comfortable in what we're doing while we're trying to seek comfort. We seek comfort. We see that the Bible says something that we shouldn't do, but we found something that the Bible doesn't specifically mention that specific thing, so we do it. Like this, they marry Moabite women because it's not prohibited. It's discouraged, but it's not prohibited, and they found comfort in that. That was a beautiful thing. Marriage is a beautiful thing, but there was a way for them to seek comfort and to find comfort. But we play with a line of doing wrong. If there's a line here, we play with that. We try and see how close we can get to the line to find comfort. We try and play with that line. We test it. How far can we go? How far can we go before it's officially called a sin or before it's officially wrong? But friends, we need to stop playing with this line. Once we're playing with this line, once we're this close to this line, we've come too far. We need to be as far back from the line as possible that we aren't even tempted. Because who knows, when you're this close to the line, you see something that's nice on the other side. It's not that far over. We need to be as far away as possible so that nothing can cause us to reach over that line. That line is a dangerous thing. In that time of famine, Naomi lost everything. She lost her home. Bethlehem, she moved from Bethlehem to Moab. She lost her house, her friends, her family in Bethlehem. She lost what she knew. She lost her family, her husband and her sons. They all passed away. So now she was left there in Moab by herself with her 2 daughters-in-law. She had no blood family in Moab. It was her, and that was difficult because now she's a single woman, and in those times that meant no lack of financial support. There was uncertainty in the air. And then she ran. And while we were running from famine, while we were running from our spiritual, physical famine, the world has an opportunity to take. The world has an opportunity to take. We're vulnerable. We're making those rushed, illogical decisions, panic, worrying. We're not really concerned with too much else. We're just trying to focus on getting out of there or finding a way out or focusing on that specific thing. We're not worried about what's happening around us. But the world has an opportunity to take. I don't want to say we open the door, but there's an opportunity there when we're running, when we're not focusing, when we're leaving the Father for the world to come in and the world to take. That's what it says when it says Moab was often represented the world and its temptations, taking people away from God's provision. And that's what it did here. It took people away, it represented the world, and it took from Naomi. The world took from her. If we carry on reading in verses 6 and 7, it says, Then Naomi heard in Moab, while she was still in Moab, that the Lord had blessed his people in Judah by giving them good crops again. So Naomi and her daughters-in-law got ready to leave Moab to return to her homeland. With her 2 daughters-in-law, she set out from the place where she had been living, and they took the road that would lead them back to Judah. In our seasons of famine, loss, hurt, loneliness, worry, doubt, whatever that season of famine may be, the Lord has an opportunity to reveal himself to us in ways that we never expected, in ways that we never knew we needed. Naomi thought that this was it, that this was stuck, but then she heard that the Lord had blessed them. And that is something the Lord doesn't maybe it doesn't meet with you directly. He may not come and find you, but he may do things that you see his provision. You see his provision over your family, over his home, while we are struggling through this famine. And that is how he reveals his love to us. Like I said, he has never gone. He is never too far. He never just leaves and abandons. He's always there. He's always faithful. He will always remain to his promises. He had promised things over Israel. He had promised things over the land of Israel to Abraham. That was that covenant that he made. And so they were running because they were unsure. They moved because there was famine and there was worry in the land that there wasn't going to be provision. But the Lord made a promise about Israel. And that was coming through, and the Lord had blessed them. And now they're like, flip, we realize we've come too far. We realize we've gone. I've got nothing left. The world has taken things. I need to go back. I need to go back to my home. I need to go back to the Lord. I need to go back to where it started. And that's sometimes for us, we drift. I don't like the term backsliding. It sounds a bit hectic, but we backslide a little bit. We leave the church. We sometimes run. We move. And then we see what the Lord is doing in other people's lives, or he gives us a revelation, or we feel stirred to come back. And when we come back, we are so loved. There's so much love, and we can't avoid it. You can't run from the Father's love. You cannot run from the love that he has for you, the plans that he has for you, the purposes that he has for you. And so I want to share a bit of a testimony. So I was in a season of famine, because this story I relate to this a lot, this whole bigger than you think, from famine to fruitfulness. It relates to me a lot. And so when I was in a season of famine, I was not necessarily, I was running. We went through a difficult time as a family, and I was like, no, there's no God. Exactly what I've mentioned here. I don't believe. And I was running. I was in the world. I was fighting. I was doing everything that I could to just find comfort in the world, chasing this never-ending chase of partying, alcohol, whatever it is. And I was running. I had no intentions of coming back. But one random Wednesday, I met Bruce at a driving range, and that is when this whole journey started. That is when I say sometimes it takes someone else to kickstart your faith. Sometimes it takes someone else to start your journey. That was when this started for me. When I met Bruce at that driving range, I had no intentions. I didn't even realize that I knew Bruce for a long time, but I forgot that he led a church. I just went to say hi as a courtesy. But that the Lord made me go say hi. The Lord brought me there as a part of his plan, as a part of his purpose. Then I went on a trip to Zimbabwe with Zander. And on that trip, the Lord uses somebody. So in this story, you'll see it. I don't want to go too far ahead because Ian's preaching on the next verses next week. But sometimes there's someone to kickstart your journey, and then there's people to support your journey. And so when I went on that trip to Zim, I went with Zander, and then he played a big role, and he still plays a big role, but he played a big role in that trip. And then there were giants of the faith on that trip, like Henny Cater and Ray Oliver, who were there, who spoke over me, who spoke into my life, who I just saw the glory of God flowing through, how they just loved him, how they worshiped him, how they were so submitted to him that changed everything. Then I came back from that trip and I started working in the church. And then there was people around me like Jonathan and Terry who have played a vital role in my journey and in this walk. And Zander as well, he's still here. He's on staff with us. There's people like John Thompson, one of my mentors. He's on eldership here. He's played a vital role in supporting me, and he's shown me so many things. There's people like Gabby, Zander's wife, who's also played a massive part in my life and in my journey that have brought me to the spot where I am today because of their support, which is what, if you'll see it in the next verse, which is what Ruth was to Naomi in that time when there was nothing. When Naomi had no family, all she had were her daughters-in-law. That's what Ruth was to Naomi. As Zander said, I got to the privilege of emceeing the first service this year, and that was crazy. Emceeing was this big thing, and now obviously I would have liked to preach. I don't know if I would have, but preaching was also this next thing. But I didn't think I would do it this year. I didn't think I would have the opportunity to preach. Then I did get the opportunity at a combined service earlier this year, and now I have the opportunity of preaching at the final service of the year. And that is where this title, "It's Bigger Than You Think," comes into play. Because this story, this God, this plan, this kingdom is so much bigger than we can think, church. I don't think we don't understand, because it is so much bigger than we think. It's so much bigger than I think. If you had to ask me, even in Zim, you have to tell me that I was going to preach on a Sunday, however many times I was going to MC, I said, nah, not this quickly. Maybe in a couple of years, maybe when I'm 30 or 40, like Zander Johnny's age, somewhere there. Joking. Joking. But maybe then I need more experience, I need more time. The Lord doesn't care about your timing. He has his timing. He has his time. I'm 22. I didn't expect to be doing this at 22. But here I am, and it's not because of me. It's not because of me. It's because of his faithfulness, his plan, and his purpose.